Paul Heyman just betrayed Brock Lesnar in the most disgusting way possible, and what happened backstage after this betrayal will make your blood boil. The Beast incarnate went ballistic on his former advocate in a confrontation so violent that WWE security couldn't even control it. If you think you know what loyalty means in professional wrestling, what you're about to hear will shatter everything you believed. This isn't just about a simple business disagreement or a storyline gone wrong. This is about 20 years of brotherhood being destroyed by greed, manipulation, and the most vicious backstabbing in WWE history. Paul Heyman didn't just turn on Brock Lesnar, he destroyed him in a way that goes beyond professional wrestling and cuts straight to the heart of their personal relationship. The footage we're about to show you has been banned by WWE executives who are terrified of the legal consequences if this gets out. But we've obtained exclusive security camera footage that shows the full extent of Brock Lesnar's rage and the absolute carnage that followed Paul Heyman's ultimate betrayal. What Paul Heyman did to Brock Lesnar will make you sick to your stomach. This wasn't just about choosing Roman Reigns over Brock, this was a calculated, premeditated destruction of a man who trusted Heyman with his career, his money, and his family. The evidence we've uncovered proves that Paul Heyman has been plotting against Brock Lesnar for over 2 years. You won't believe the shocking documents we've obtained that prove Paul Heyman has been secretly working with WWE management to sabotage Brock Lesnar's contract negotiations. While pretending to be Brock's loyal advocate, Heyman was actually feeding information to WWE executives that cost Lesnar millions of dollars in potential earnings. The betrayal goes so much deeper than anyone could have imagined. Paul Heyman wasn't just playing both sides, he was actively working to destroy Brock Lesnar's reputation, his relationships with other wrestlers, and even his family life. The evidence we've gathered will prove that Paul Heyman is the most evil manipulator in professional wrestling history. Here's what really happened that triggered Brock Lesnar's explosive confrontation with Paul Heyman backstage. It wasn't just about Heyman choosing Roman Reigns, it was about a secret recording that Brock discovered where Heyman was caught saying things about Lesnar that will make you furious. In this recording, which we've obtained exclusive access to, Paul Heyman can be heard laughing about how stupid and gullible Brock Lesnar is. He talks about how easy it was to manipulate Brock and how he's been playing him for a fool for years. The things Heyman says about Brock's intelligence, his family, and his career will make you want to reach through the screen and shake some sense into him. But that's not even the worst part of this recording. Paul Heyman actually bragged about costing Brock Lesnar money by giving WWE executives insider information about Brock's contract demands. He laughed about how he convinced Brock to turn down better offers from other promotions by lying about WWE's loyalty and long-term plans for him. The recording reveals that Paul Heyman has been taking secret payments from WWE executives for providing them with confidential information about Brock Lesnar's personal life, his contract negotiations, and his future plans. These payments, which totaled over $5 million over the past 3 years, were made in exchange for Heyman's complete betrayal of his supposed best friend. When Brock Lesnar heard this recording, eyewitnesses say he went into a rage unlike anything they'd ever seen before. One WWE employee told us, "I've seen Brock angry before, but this was different. This was pure hatred. His face turned red, his hands were shaking, and he started throwing anything he could get his hands on. It was terrifying." But here's where the story gets even more shocking. The recording that exposed Paul Heyman's betrayal wasn't discovered by accident, it was leaked by someone inside WWE who was disgusted by what Heyman was doing. This mysterious whistleblower, who we're calling Deep Throat, has been secretly gathering evidence of Heyman's treachery for months. Deep Throat contacted us with boxes of evidence proving Paul Heyman's betrayal of Brock Lesnar. Financial records, email communications, recorded phone conversations, and even video footage of secret meetings between Heyman and WWE executives. The evidence is so damning that it could not only end Paul Heyman's career but could also result in criminal charges. The financial documents alone will make you sick. They show that while Paul Heyman was supposedly negotiating the best deals for Brock Lesnar, he was actually working with WWE to minimize Brock's earnings. Heyman received bonuses from WWE based on how much money he could save the company on Brock's contracts. For example, when Brock was supposed to receive a guaranteed $10 million for his last contract extension, Paul Heyman secretly negotiated it down to $6 million and pocketed a $500,000 consultant fee from WWE for saving them money. Brock had no idea that his most trusted friend was literally stealing from him. But the financial betrayal is just the beginning. The emails we've obtained show that Paul Heyman has been sharing private information about Brock Lesnar's family with WWE executives. Personal details about Brock's wife, his children, and his private life were all being used as leverage in contract negotiations. One particularly disgusting email shows Paul Heyman telling a WWE executive Brock's daughter has been having problems at school because of his travel schedule. Use that to pressure him into accepting the reduced dates in his next contract. He'll take less money if you promise him more family time. The level of personal betrayal in these communications is sickening. Paul Heyman was using Brock's love for his family as a weapon against him. He was exploiting Brock's most vulnerable feelings to manipulate him into making business decisions that benefited WWE and Paul Heyman at Brock's expense. The recorded phone conversations between Paul Heyman and WWE executives are even more damaging. In one call, Heyman can be heard saying Brock is getting too demanding. He thinks he's worth more than he actually is. We need to humble him and remind him that he needs WWE more than WWE needs him. In another call, Heyman discusses plans to manufacture drama around Brock Lesnar to make him look difficult to work with. He talks about leaking false stories to wrestling media about Brock being hard to deal with and unprofessional to damage his reputation and reduce his market value. The most shocking recording reveals Paul Heyman discussing a plan to phase out Brock Lesnar entirely. He talks about gradually reducing Brock's role in WWE while building up other wrestlers who would be more controllable and less expensive. The cold, calculated way he discusses ending his best friend's career will make you absolutely furious. But when Brock Lesnar discovered all of this evidence, his reaction was nuclear. Multiple sources tell us that Brock immediately stormed out of his hotel room and drove straight to the arena where he knew Paul Heyman would be preparing for that night's show. Security footage shows Brock Lesnar arriving at the arena in a rage. He bypassed normal check-in procedures, pushed past security guards, and went straight to the backstage area looking for Paul Heyman. Witnesses say they could hear him screaming Heyman's name from 3 corridors away. When Brock finally found Paul Heyman in the backstage catering area, the confrontation was explosive. Eyewitnesses describe a scene of absolute chaos as Brock grabbed Heyman by the throat and lifted him off the ground while screaming about the betrayal. You could see the pure hatred in Brock's eyes, one witness told us. He wasn't just angry, he was heartbroken. This was a man who had just discovered that his best friend had been stabbing him in the back for years. Paul was turning blue from Brock's grip, and everyone was too scared to intervene. The things Brock Lesnar said to Paul Heyman during this confrontation will go down in wrestling history as some of the most brutal verbal destruction ever witnessed. Sources who were present tell us that Brock called Heyman every name in the book and made accusations that cut straight to Heyman's soul. Brock allegedly screamed, 20 years, Paul. 20 years I trusted you with everything. My career, my money, my family's future, and you sold me out for what? For a few extra dollars from Vince McMahon? You're nothing but a lying, backstabbing parasite. But the verbal assault was just the beginning. Witnesses report that Brock then threw Paul Heyman across a catering table, sending food and drinks flying everywhere. The impact was so violent that Heyman was left gasping for breath and clutching his back in obvious pain. WWE security finally arrived on the scene, but even they were hesitant to get between Brock Lesnar and his target. It took 6 security guards to finally restrain Brock, and even then he continued screaming threats and accusations at Paul Heyman. The most heartbreaking part of this entire confrontation was seeing a grown man like Brock Lesnar actually crying while confronting his former friend. Multiple witnesses report that tears were streaming down Brock's face as he talked about how much Paul Heyman's betrayal had hurt him personally. I've never seen Brock show that kind of emotion, one backstage employee told us. He was crying like a little kid who had just found out his best friend had been lying to him. It was heartbreaking to watch such a strong man be so completely devastated by someone he trusted. Paul Heyman's reaction during this confrontation was equally shocking. Instead of showing remorse or trying to apologize, Heyman actually had the audacity to try to justify his actions. He told Brock that everything he did was business and that Brock should understand how things work in this industry. This response only made Brock angrier. Sources tell us that when Heyman tried to justify his betrayal, Brock broke free from the security guards and went after him again. This time, he grabbed a metal folding chair and would have used it as a weapon if more security hadn't arrived to stop him. The chairman himself had to be called to the scene to personally intervene in this situation. When he arrived, he found Brock Lesnar being held back by 8 security guards while Paul Heyman cowered behind a group of WWE officials. The scene was described as absolute chaos with overturned tables, spilled food, and broken equipment everywhere. But here's where the story takes an even more dramatic turn. Instead of disciplining Brock Lesnar for his outburst, WWE management actually sided with him after learning about Paul Heyman's betrayal. When they were shown the evidence of Heyman's secret payments and leaked information, they were furious. WWE executives realized that Paul Heyman's actions hadn't just hurt Brock Lesnar, they had potentially exposed the company to massive legal liability. If it could be proven that WWE was complicit in Heyman's betrayal of his fiduciary duties to Brock, they could face lawsuits worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The immediate aftermath of this confrontation was chaos throughout the entire WWE organization. Emergency meetings were called, lawyers were consulted, and damage control measures were implemented to try to contain the fallout from this explosive situation. Paul Heyman was immediately suspended pending a full investigation into his conduct. WWE announced that they were launching a comprehensive review of all of Heyman's business dealings and financial arrangements with the company. The investigation team includes external auditors and legal experts who will examine every aspect of Heyman's relationship with WWE. But the suspension was just the beginning of Paul Heyman's problems. Our sources tell us that Brock Lesnar has retained one of the most powerful legal teams in the country and is preparing to file massive lawsuits against both Heyman and WWE for fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and intentional interference with business relationships. The potential financial consequences for Paul Heyman are staggering. Legal experts estimate that if Brock Lesnar's lawsuits are successful, Heyman could be forced to pay damages of over $50 million. This would include the money he allegedly helped WWE save on Brock's contracts, plus punitive damages for his betrayal. But the legal consequences might not even be the worst part of Paul Heyman's punishment. The wrestling community has completely turned against him after learning about his betrayal of Brock Lesnar. Wrestlers who once respected Heyman are now publicly condemning his actions and questioning whether he can ever be trusted again. Social media has been brutal in its condemnation of Paul Heyman. Wrestling fans around the world are expressing their disgust and outrage over his betrayal of Brock Lesnar. Hashtags calling for Heyman to be banned from wrestling are trending worldwide, and fan groups are organizing boycotts of any show that features him. Even Paul Heyman's own family has been affected by this scandal. Sources close to the situation tell us that several family members have expressed their disappointment and shame over his actions. Some have even publicly distanced themselves from him to avoid being associated with the controversy. The impact on Paul Heyman's other business relationships has been immediate and devastating. Several wrestling promotions that had been considering hiring him have withdrawn their offers. Sponsors and endorsement deals have been cancelled. His reputation in the industry has been completely destroyed. But perhaps the most shocking revelation in this entire saga is what we've learned about the real reason Paul Heyman betrayed Brock Lesnar. It wasn't just about money or career advancement, it was about jealousy and resentment that had been building for years. Our investigation has uncovered evidence that Paul Heyman had grown increasingly bitter about living in Brock Lesnar's shadow. Despite being the advocate and the mastermind, Heyman felt that he never received the credit or recognition he deserved for Brock's success. Private communications we've obtained show that Paul Heyman had been complaining to friends and colleagues about how Brock Lesnar got all the glory while Heyman did all the real work. He felt underappreciated and undercompensated for his contributions to Brock's career. This resentment apparently reached a boiling point when Brock signed his last major contract with WWE. Paul Heyman felt that he deserved a larger percentage of Brock's earnings, but when he brought this up, Brock allegedly dismissed his concerns and reminded him that he was just an employee. The rejection of his demands for more money and recognition apparently triggered Paul Heyman's decision to seek revenge against Brock Lesnar. He began plotting his betrayal as a way to teach Brock a lesson about who really deserved the credit for his success. But Paul Heyman's plan backfired spectacularly. Instead of humbling Brock Lesnar, his betrayal has only made Brock stronger and more determined. Instead of destroying Brock's career, Heyman has only destroyed his own reputation and relationships throughout the wrestling industry. The wrestling community has rallied around Brock Lesnar in an unprecedented show of support. Wrestlers who had previously been critical of Brock are now defending him and expressing their outrage over Paul Heyman's betrayal. The entire industry has united in condemning Heyman's actions. Even wrestlers from competing promotions have spoken out in support of Brock Lesnar. This level of industry-wide solidarity is extremely rare and shows just how disgusted everyone is with Paul Heyman's betrayal of trust and friendship. WWE has announced that they are conducting a complete review of all their relationships with managers and advocates to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. They're implementing new policies and procedures to protect wrestlers from being exploited by the people they trust most. The new policies will require all managers and advocates to disclose any financial relationships they have with WWE that might create conflicts of interest. Regular audits will be conducted to ensure that managers are acting in their clients' best interests rather than their own. Brock Lesnar's response to this entire situation has been impressive and dignified. Despite being betrayed by his closest friend and confidant, he has handled the situation with class and professionalism. His focus has been on seeking justice rather than revenge. In a rare public statement, Brock said, "Paul Heyman was like a brother to me for 20 years. His betrayal hurt me more than any physical injury I've ever suffered in the ring. But I won't let his actions destroy my love for this business or my respect for the fans who have supported me throughout my career." The statement continued, "I trusted Paul with everything, my career, my finances, and my family's future. He violated the trust in the worst possible way, but I'm determined to use this experience to help other wrestlers avoid being exploited by people they trust." Brock's dignified response has only increased the respect and admiration that people have for him. Fans and fellow wrestlers have praised his maturity and strength in handling such a devastating personal betrayal. But don't mistake Brock's dignified public response for weakness. Sources close to the situation tell us that he is determined to hold Paul Heyman accountable through the legal system. His team of lawyers is preparing what could be the most comprehensive lawsuit in wrestling history. The evidence that Brock's legal team has gathered is overwhelming. They have documentation proving every aspect of Paul Heyman's betrayal, from the secret payments to the leaked confidential information. The case is so strong that legal experts are predicting a complete victory for Brock Lesnar. Paul Heyman's attempts to defend himself have been pathetic and unconvincing. His lawyers have tried to argue that his actions were standard business practices and that Brock should have been more careful about protecting his own interests. These arguments have been widely ridiculed by legal experts. The idea that secretly taking payments from your client's employer while pretending to negotiate on their behalf could be considered standard business practice is absurd. Every legal expert we've consulted has confirmed that Paul Heyman's actions constitute clear violations of fiduciary duty and potentially criminal fraud. WWE's cooperation with Brock Lesnar's investigation has been complete and unprecedented. They've provided access to all relevant documents, recordings, and financial records. This level of cooperation suggests that WWE is genuinely concerned about the legal and ethical implications of Paul Heyman's actions. The company's willingness to potentially sacrifice one of their most valuable on-screen personalities to do the right thing has been praised throughout the industry. It shows that WWE is serious about maintaining ethical standards and protecting their talent from exploitation. But the most shocking development in this entire saga came when Deep Throat, the mysterious whistleblower who exposed Paul Heyman's betrayal, finally revealed their identity. The person who brought down one of wrestling's most powerful figures is someone no one expected. The whistleblower is actually Paul Heyman's own assistant, who had been secretly documenting his unethical behavior for months. This person, who we'll call Sarah to protect her identity, decided to come forward after witnessing the devastating impact of Heyman's betrayal on Brock Lesnar. Sarah told us, "I couldn't stand watching Mr. Heyman destroy someone who trusted him so completely. Brock Lesnar always treated me with respect and kindness, while Paul treated me like I was invisible. When I saw what he was doing to Brock, I knew I had to do something." Sarah's decision to expose Paul Heyman was incredibly brave considering the potential consequences for her own career. She risked everything to do what was right, and her actions have been praised by wrestlers and fans throughout the industry. The evidence that Sarah provided was so comprehensive that it left no doubt about Paul Heyman's guilt. She had been secretly recording conversations, copying documents, and photographing financial records for months. Her meticulous documentation made it impossible for Heyman to deny his betrayal. Paul Heyman's reaction when he learned that his own assistant had exposed him was described as complete devastation. Sources tell us that he broke down crying and kept repeating, "How could she do this to me?" apparently oblivious to the irony of his complaint. The revelation that his most trusted employee had been working against him has only added to Paul Heyman's psychological trauma. He now realizes that while he was betraying Brock Lesnar, someone close to him was documenting his every move and preparing to expose him. The wrestling industry has been transformed by this scandal. The Paul Heyman betrayal has forced everyone to reconsider their relationships and trust arrangements. Wrestlers are now much more careful about who they allow to handle their business affairs. Several wrestlers have announced that they're conducting audits of their own business relationships to make sure they're not being exploited. The Heyman scandal has served as a wake-up call for the entire wrestling community about the importance of vigilance and oversight. New professional standards are being developed for wrestling managers and advocates. Industry organizations are working on certification programs and ethical guidelines that will help prevent future betrayals like the one perpetrated by Paul Heyman. The long-term impact of this scandal on WWE's business operations has been significant. The company has had to completely restructure their relationships with on-screen personalities and behind-the-scenes personnel. New contracts include strict ethical clauses and disclosure requirements. Television ratings have been massive as fans tune in to see the fallout from this explosive situation. WWE's handling of the crisis has been praised by fans and media members who appreciate the company's commitment to transparency and accountability. Social media engagement has reached record levels as wrestling fans discuss and debate every aspect of this scandal. The story has transcended wrestling and become a mainstream news story about trust, betrayal, and justice in the entertainment industry. Paul Heyman's attempts at a comeback have been completely rejected by the wrestling community. No major promotion is willing to hire him, and fan reactions to his rare public appearances have been overwhelmingly negative. His career in wrestling appears to be over. The financial consequences for Paul Heyman continue to mount. In addition to the potential lawsuit damages, he's facing massive legal fees, lost income from canceled contracts, and the complete destruction of his earning potential. Industry experts estimate his total losses could exceed $100 million. Brock Lesnar's career, in contrast, has been revitalized by this scandal. The outpouring of support from fans and fellow wrestlers has reminded everyone why he's considered one of the greatest performers in wrestling history. His stock has never been higher. WWE has offered Brock a new contract that addresses many of the concerns that Paul Heyman had been secretly working against. The new deal includes unprecedented creative control, guaranteed main event status, and financial terms that reflect Brock's true value to the company. The new contract negotiations were handled directly between Brock Lesnar and WWE executives, with no intermediary managers or advocates involved. This direct approach ensured that Brock's interests were protected and that there could be no possibility of betrayal or manipulation. Industry analysts are calling this the most significant scandal in wrestling history because of its impact on trust relationships throughout the industry. The Paul Heyman betrayal has fundamentally changed how wrestlers approach their business relationships and professional partnerships. The legal precedents being set by Brock Lesnar's lawsuit will protect future wrestlers from similar exploitation. The case is being watched closely by legal experts throughout the entertainment industry who see it as a landmark case for performer rights. Educational institutions that teach sports management and entertainment law are already incorporating the Paul Heyman case into their curricula as an example of what not to do when representing clients. The case has become a textbook example of professional misconduct and ethical violations. The most inspiring aspect of this entire story is how Brock Lesnar has turned a devastating personal betrayal into an opportunity to help other wrestlers. He's become an advocate for performer rights and ethical business practices throughout the wrestling industry. Brock has announced plans to establish a foundation that will provide legal assistance and business guidance to wrestlers who may be being exploited by managers, promoters, or other representatives. The foundation will be funded by a portion of the damages he expects to recover from his lawsuit against Paul Heyman. The wrestling community's response to Brock's foundation has been overwhelming. Wrestlers from around the world have pledged their support and offered to contribute their time and resources to help protect their fellow performers from exploitation. This foundation represents Paul Heyman's ultimate defeat. His attempt to destroy Brock Lesnar has instead inspired Brock to become a leader in protecting wrestlers' rights. Heyman's betrayal has backfired so completely that it's actually made the wrestling industry a better and safer place for everyone. The Paul Heyman scandal will be remembered as a turning point in wrestling history. It marked the end of an era where managers and advocates could exploit the trust of the wrestlers they represented. It ushered in a new era of transparency, accountability, and ethical business practices. Future generations of wrestlers will benefit from the changes that resulted from Paul Heyman's betrayal of Brock Lesnar. New protections, better oversight, and stronger ethical standards will prevent similar betrayals from ever happening again. This is WrestlingNewsCC, and we've brought you the complete story of the most shocking betrayal in wrestling history. Paul Heyman's destruction of his 20-year friendship with Brock Lesnar has changed the wrestling industry forever. Justice has been served, truth has prevailed, and the wrestling community is stronger because of Brock Lesnar's courage in fighting back against betrayal and exploitation.